Alcatraz, 1954. 6:15 a.m. Steam rose from the showers in Block D like ghosts on a winter morning. Bumpy Johnson was there, back turned to the entrance, letting the hot water cascade over his tense shoulders. At 47, he had seen it all. Gang wars in Harlem, shootouts with the police, betrayals that would have cost lesser men their lives. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the next 3 seconds that would change the hierarchy of Alcatraz forever. His name was Jake the Bull Morrison, 6 feet 5 inches of pure hatred straight out of Mississippi, convicted of first-degree murder after killing 3 men in a bar just because they looked at his beer. Jake had a reputation. He didn't care about prison rules. He didn't care about respect. And he definitely didn't care if you were Bumpy Johnson, the legendary king of Harlem. For Jake, only one thing mattered: the color of your skin. That morning, Jake walked into the shower with his 2 cronies, Ricky and Dutch, 3 white supremacists who controlled the cigarette trafficking in Block D through fear. They beat anyone who didn't pay. They broke fingers of anyone who complained. And they had an unofficial rule: black men showered after, always after. But there was Bumpy Johnson, occupying the best shower in the block, the only one with decent water pressure, as if he owned the place. Jake spat on the floor. "Hey nigger, you're in the wrong shower." Bumpy didn't turn around. He just stood there, letting the water fall, as if Jake were nothing more than another annoying noise in the background. That was the first spark. Jake wasn't used to being ignored. "I'm talking to you, monkey." His voice echoed off the tiled walls. 12 other inmates who were showering stopped. Everyone knew what was about to happen. When Jake Morrison started, he didn't stop until he saw blood. Bumpy finally turned off the shower. Slowly, very slowly. He grabbed his towel, wrapped it around his waist, and only then turned to face Jake. And in that moment, anyone who knew Bumpy Johnson would have known. They would have seen it in his eyes, in his stance, in the way he breathed. Something was about to happen, something no one there would ever forget. "You talking to me?" Bumpy's voice was low, calm, dangerously calm. Jake stepped forward, his massive fists already clenched. He had at least 40 pounds on Bumpy, 20 years younger, 2 friends armed with shivs. He had every advantage. "Damn right I'm talking to you, you piece of shit. You think you can come to Alcatraz and act like you're somebody? In Harlem you might be somebody, but here you're just another nigger I'm gonna teach to stay in his place." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the dripping water from the showers seemed to stop. Bumpy didn't blink, didn't back down. He just stood there, staring into Jake Morrison's eyes like he was reading a very boring book. And then he did something no one expected. He smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile a shark gives before it strikes. "You done? Because I've got 3 seconds of patience, and you just used 2. Jake exploded. He lunged, his right fist coming in a perfect hook straight for Bumpy's face. It was a punch that had dropped bigger men, a punch that had broken jaws and noses, but it never landed. Bumpy moved. Not much, just enough. Jake's fist passed inches from his face, and in that exact moment, Bumpy counterattacked. Not with a punch, with something far worse. With truth. 3 seconds, Jake. That's all you had. Bumpy's elbow shot up in a movement so fast it was a blur, striking Jake square in the throat. The sound was awful. A dry crack followed by a choke. Jake dropped to his knees, clutching his neck, trying to breathe. Ricky and Dutch rushed in, but Bumpy was already moving. He grabbed Ricky's arm, twisted with surgical precision, and the sound of bone snapping echoed off the walls. Ricky screamed and fell. Dutch was the smartest. He had a blade, a homemade knife made from a toothbrush sharpened on concrete. He held it like he knew what he was doing, circling slowly, looking for an opening. Bumpy didn't move. He just looked at Dutch and spoke. "You really want to do this? You saw what happened to your friends. You saw how quick it was. So think hard, because if you come at me, I won't hurt you. I'll destroy you, and you'll spend the rest of your sentence drinking food through a straw." Dutch hesitated. That hesitation was everything, because in that moment, everyone in the shower understood. Bumpy Johnson wasn't making empty threats. He was stating facts. And when Dutch finally lowered the knife and stepped back, the balance of power in Alcatraz shifted completely. Jake was still on the floor, gasping, tears streaming down his face. Not from pain, from humiliation. Bumpy crouched beside him, so close no one else could hear. But Bumpy's lips moved, and Jake went pale. No one ever knew exactly what Bumpy said in that moment. But Jake Morrison, the man who had killed 3 people without blinking, who had beaten guards, who feared nothing, walked out of that shower a changed man. He never looked at Bumpy Johnson again, never spoke his name again. And when anyone asked what happened, Jake just shook his head and stayed silent. But the story didn't end there, because what happened in that shower was only the first move. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a fighter, he was a strategist. He understood that violence without purpose was waste, and those 3 seconds in the shower had a very specific purpose: to establish respect, not through fear, but through demonstrating that he was different, that he saw 10 steps ahead, that he understood the game on a level men like Jake Morrison didn't even know existed. 2 days later, Bumpy was in the yard when he was approached by Marcus "Ice" Thompson, the leader of Alcatraz's Black Gang. Marcus had heard the shower story, everyone had, and he wanted to make a proposal. "Bumpy, you dropped Jake in 3 seconds. That's respect. Join us. With you on our side, we can control this whole place. We've got connections with guards, smuggling routes, protection. You'd be my second in command. Together, we'd be unstoppable." Bumpy surveyed the yard. Men playing cards, lifting weights, forming small territorial groups like primitive tribes. All afraid. All trying to survive through fragile alliances built on threats. Bumpy looked at Marcus the way a teacher looks at a student who didn't do the homework. "Control? You think I want to control Alcatraz? Marcus, I'm not here to build an empire in a cage. I'm here to survive and get back to Harlem. Every day I spend plotting domination here is a day stolen from my real life out there." But Marcus pressed, stepping closer, lowering his voice. "You've got power now, Bumpy. Everyone's talking about you. The whites are scared. The guards are paying attention. The Mexicans want deals. Even the Italians are sending signals of respect. Use it. Build something." Bumpy shook his head slowly, a sad smile on his lips. "Power that comes from fear is fragile, Marcus. It lasts until someone scarier shows up, someone crazier, someone with less to lose. Real power comes from something else. It comes from making people understand that attacking you is a bad idea, not because you'll hurt them, but because you're more valuable alive than dead, because you solve problems instead of creating them." 3 weeks later, Jake Morrison was stabbed in the mess hall, not by Bumpy, not by anyone from Marcus's gang. It was one of his own men, a guy named Lenny, who decided Jake was too weak to lead after the shower humiliation. Jake survived, but was transferred to solitary for his own protection. And when he got out 6 months later, he was no longer leading anything. He was just another inmate serving his time in silence. Bumpy, on the other hand, became something different. He wasn't the leader of any gang. He didn't control any trade. But when there were disputes, people came to him. When there were problems that needed solving without violence, they sought out Bumpy Johnson, because he had proven something few men in Alcatraz understood: that intelligence beats brute force, that patience beats impulsiveness, that 3 seconds of decisive action are worth more than years of empty threats. The guards noticed. Warden Thompson summoned Bumpy to his office 4 months after the shower incident. "Johnson, you're causing an interesting problem." Bumpy raised an eyebrow. "A problem, sir?" Thompson leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming on the worn wooden desk. "Since you arrived, fights in Block D have dropped 60%. Stabbings are down by half. Even the smuggling has slowed. You're not causing chaos. You're creating order. And that makes me uncomfortable because I don't know what you get out of it." Thompson opened a folder on his desk. "I've got reports here from 6 different guards. They all say the same thing. When a conflict is brewing, someone always says, 'Let me talk to Bumpy first.' You've become an unofficial mediator, a judge, and the men respect your verdict more than the rules of this prison. That's dangerous, Johnson." Bumpy folded his hands calmly. "More dangerous than men stabbing each other in the mess hall? More dangerous than riots? More dangerous than guards being attacked?" The warden was silent for a moment, considering. "You've got a point." Bumpy smiled. "I get peace, Warden. I get time to read my books, think, plan my future when I get out of here. Violence is loud. Violence draws attention. I prefer silence." Thompson studied Bumpy for a long moment. "You're different from the others, Johnson. Most men here are trying to prove something. You've already proven it." Bumpy stood to leave but paused at the door. "Can I give you some advice, Warden?" Thompson nodded. "That day in the shower, when Jake Morrison called me those names, I had 3 choices: ignore it and be seen as weak. fight and become just like him. Or do what I did, end it in 3 seconds and never have to prove anything again. I chose the third option. It's always the smartest. Bumpy Johnson spent 2 more years in Alcatraz. In that time, Block D became the quietest in the entire prison. Not because Bumpy ruled through fear, but because he had established something no gang leader had managed: genuine respect. When he finally left in 1963, more than 50 inmates, white and black, came to say goodbye. Jake Morrison was among them. He didn't say a word, just nodded. And Bumpy returned the gesture. Years later, back in Harlem, a young journalist asked Bumpy about Alcatraz. "Is it true you dropped a white supremacist in 3 seconds?" Bumpy took a sip of his cognac, looking out the window at the streets he knew so well. "3 seconds is how long it takes to change a life," he replied. His, mine, and everyone who was watching in that shower. But it wasn't about violence. It was about sending a clear message, and the message was simple. Respect has no color, no gang. It has character. That morning in the Alcatraz shower became legend. Inmates who weren't even there swore they'd seen it. Guards told the story to new recruits as an example of how respect works in places like that. Jake Morrison, decades later on his deathbed in a veterans hospital, told the chaplain that those 3 seconds with Bumpy Johnson had saved his life by showing him that hate wasn't power. It was weakness disguised as strength. It was fear trying to hide behind violence. And Bumpy? He never spoke about it publicly again. Because to him it wasn't a moment of glory or conquest. It was just another day in Alcatraz. Another lesson about human nature. Another proof that true power isn't in the strength of your muscles or the size of your fists or how many men you can intimidate. It's in the speed of your thinking, the clarity of your intentions, and the unshakable strength of your conviction. 3 seconds. That's all he needed to prove that Bumpy Johnson, even behind the most secure bars in America, even surrounded by hundreds of violent and desperate men, was still the most dangerous man in the room. Not because he could fight better, but because he didn't need to. He had already won before the fight even started.